How can you get stronger and faster at the same time? How can you build muscle while running longer distances? What is the most effective hybrid training split? While there is no single best answer for any of these questions, there are definitely ways that you can make faster progress, take up less time, and have more fun. Now, everyone has their own goals and constraints to work around, so the specifics of the split will have to be adjusted. But in this video, I'm going to go through the key principles and strategies that I've used in my training program to get stronger and faster at the same time. If you're just here for the training split and don't care about me or my well thought out talking points, then here you go. For everyone else, hi, my name is Kush, and I've been trying out this hybrid training thing for a while now because I got really into running but refused to accept that I have to sacrifice strength or muscle. I basically made this YouTube channel to document my journey and report back what works and what doesn't. So if you think that's the type of content you would be interested in, consider subscribing. It's free and you can always change your mind later. The core aspects of a hybrid training plan are the runs and the lifts. Now, intuitively, it might feel like these two forms of training are completely incompatible, like they're working in opposite directions and completely negate each other out. And while this might be true at the extreme ends of either sport, if you're just a regular person like me who has a life outside of training and doesn't care about being a world-class runner or an Olympic level powerlifter, then you can definitely craft a training split that will build you up to be above average in both disciplines. And honestly, if you aren't at the elite levels of either of these sports, then this is definitely the way to go. You get respect from the old heads at the gym while still being able to keep up with the ridiculously fast kid at your local park run. Alright, let's talk about the essential components of a hybrid training program before putting it all together at the end. First up, we've got the runs. There are three types of runs you'll want to have in your training split. These are the easy run, the hard run, and the long run. You want to build up approximately 80% of your running volume with these easy runs. For example, if you're running 50 kilometers per week, 40 of those kilometers should be at an easy pace. So how can you tell if you're running at an easy pace? Well, if you have a smartwatch with basic health tracking features, you can look at your heart rate while you're running and make sure it's around 150 or lower. This will be a bit difficult at first, so you can either do like a walk-run sort of thing where you're alternating between walking and running, but I would recommend not to stress about this too much at the start. Primarily, you just want to be running at a pace where you can kind of hold a conversation while you're running. Over time, you will notice your heart rate just naturally slowing down, but at the start, just focus on that conversational pace. Now, on these easy runs, you really want to focus on your form and your cadence, and basically just try and enjoy these as much as possible because the next run that we have is the hard run. If you're any good at math, 80% should be easy runs. The other 20%, these should be your hard runs. Or in other words, if you're running 50 kilometers per week, around 10 of these kilometers should be at this harder pace. These are the runs where you're building strength and speed and you're really pushing your heart rate, and you should feel like you're just gasping for air. So let's talk about the specific workouts you can do here. The first type is tempo runs, which is basically where you're running at a fast but steady pace for a certain distance. So an example of this could be a 1 kilometer warm-up followed by 8 kilometers at a tempo pace, followed by a 1 kilometer cool down. The next type of workout you have is interval runs. So this is where you're doing repeats of a certain distance at a certain pace. So a few examples of these include maybe a 6 by 800 meter workout, 10 by 400 meters, or 5 by 1 kilometer. And in each of these, you'd have either a standing rest or a jogging rest between each rep. And also for each one, you want to have a warm up before it and a cool down after it. The next type of workout we have, and this is the most brutal one, hill sprints. This is exactly how it sounds. You sprint up a hill as fast as you can, jog back down, and repeat as many times as you want. Again, starting with a warm-up, ending with a cool down. Alright, the final type of run we have is the long run. This is exactly as it sounds. You're just running for a long distance. Now, these will generally be at an easy pace or maybe a little bit faster, and you can incorporate speed work into them if you haven't had enough throughout the week. For example, you could go 5 kilometers easy and then 3 times 2 kilometers at a faster pace, followed by 5 kilometers easy again. And between the 2 kilometer intervals, you've got 1 kilometer easy. With the hard runs and the long runs, you should try to mix these up to keep it interesting and just give your body different stimuli. day. But yeah, the long run is mainly for building that mental and physical resilience and just getting in extra volume throughout the week. Okay, that's the running aspect of the hybrid training split. Now let's look at the lifting. With lifting, there are generally two approaches you can take, either the bodybuilding approach or the powerlifting approach. To give you an idea of what this means, the bodybuilding approach is more isolated movements, higher reps, with a focus on building muscle over strength, whereas the powerlifting approach is more focused on compound movements with lower reps and more of a focus on building strength. And in the past, I paired my running with the bodybuilding approach because my priority was aesthetics. But what I found more recently is that the powerlifting approach actually seems to work better for both aesthetics and strength. The reason for this is when you're exerting a lot of energy while running, it's easy to get complacent at the gym without really realizing it. And because the bodybuilding approach is focused on something less tangible, which is aesthetics, there aren't really any countermeasures for this. The powerlifting approach, however, is more focused on progressive overload and strength, forcing you to be more intentional with making progress. And I've also found that you do build a lot of muscle by purely focusing on getting stronger. This approach also accounts for fatigue, as with powerlifting and building strength, you generally don't want to go to failure on all of your sets, as this isn't sustainable for building strength in the long term. So this training approach does actually help balance the physical load of running and lifting. Okay, so I'll dive a bit deeper into the powerlifting approach. You can go for the classic powerlifting exercises, bench, squat, and deadlift, but I actually prefer to swap out the deadlift for a Romanian deadlift. I found that this works best for me because with RDLs, I feel less overall body fatigue and there's a greater focus on my hamstrings and glutes, which actually helps with running. Now, obviously, on top of these exercises, you'll want to add in some back exercises such as pull-ups or T-bar rows, and you'll want to add in some accessories to fill in the gaps like calves, shoulders, and arms. I'll show you how all of this fits together when I get to the final split. Now, with the compound movements, I like to follow a powerlifting-esque structure, which means I have like a primary bench day, a primary squat day, and a primary RDL day. And again, I'll go into more detail on this in the next section. All right, finally for lifting, the split that I use is what I like to call a whole body push-pull split, which basically has a push day and a pull day, but each of these days cover your whole body. So for example, the push day has bench and squat, and the pull day has RDLs and back, and then I sort of fill in the rest with everything else. I found that this just gives me a lot more balanced volume across my body, and I actually feel less fatigue on my legs as compared to like having a specific leg day. Now that we know everything we need, let's put it all together and take a look at my hybrid training split. I'll pop it up on the screen now. Now, what you're looking at is my base split, which is the foundation of my training and covers basically everything that I need. So you'll notice I've got my easy runs making up approximately 80% of my volume. I've got that hard run in there, and I've got my long run on the weekend. And then as you can see, I've got my lifting split, which has 2 push days and 2 pull days. The first push day is a primary squat day, which means I've got more of a focus on squats. The 1+3 sets that you can see basically means I've got 1 top set for my squat, which is like 1 really heavy set, followed by 3 working sets. You'll notice the same for RDLs and bench. Those are my primary days for those exercises. Then you can see I've filled in all the rest with like shoulders, back, biceps, triceps, forearms, and calves. What I'll usually do is modify this split based on whatever events I have coming up or what I want to focus on at the moment. For example, if I'm training for a marathon, I'll probably lower the weights that I'm lifting and maybe even remove the top sets to prevent fatigue. And if I'm trying to focus on strength at the moment, then I'll probably reduce the distance of my long run or even skip a few hard runs here and there. You'll also notice that I've kind of optimized my training split for recovery. So I don't have a lift on my hard run days, and I have a relatively easy lift on the weekend to account for my long run. I also have a bit of a break between my heavy leg days. So with a high training volume like this, you do need to be a little bit strategic to give your body enough time to rest. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. YouTube thinks you'll like this video, you should subscribe, and goodbye.